And it's funny, even step back on why we have an office, like people walk in too and like, oh man, this is nice. We always get a lot of compliments. And it's funny, we'll have like the football coaches come in sometimes for some meetings. They're like, what do you do? What are you guys doing here? So I think it's, having a nice space also is you're trying to attract local people. Stands out compared to if you're a local company saying, oh, you're going to work virtual.
You help them figure what they want out of life, but everything it come with a price. Want to maximize your money and time, might have to take the uncommon advice.
We had a big weekend this weekend. We did something really new to an industry that we're trying to break into, so I'm excited about talking about that today. Welcome back to another episode of Uncommon Advice. So we're going to talk about some really unique stuff today, so I'm excited for this episode. Z?
This weekend was fun. And my favorite part of this whole weekend is just getting there and everybody being so amazed of us doing that, them being like, we've never seen this before. Well, who came up with this idea? And actually one guy asked who came up. I'm like, you see that guy over there with the blue shirt, no hair? Yeah, that's him. That's what we call the Godfather. And he started laughing. We'll get into it more, but it was really cool to see the support that we got from that crowd of people saying like, we've never seen this before. This is actually really cool. And people actually wanting to come up and do the interviews. So we'll get into here more.
So in our $1 Million Audience segment here, let's dive in. So I think we're going to trademark it, the podcast pop-up. I don't know. Maybe they're happening elsewhere, but so one of our brands, Sportsbred, that we just recently started building out as we enter into new segments in the media company, sports being a big one that we're tackling. And Sportsbred, in its infant stages, we've talked about it on a previous podcast that we're kind of kicking it off and what we were doing. We're trying to figure out a way to curate a lot of content for that industry. So Sportsbred is really the sports culture around sports. We've got some news updates that we do. We've got some shoe stuff that we're doing, some fashion and gaming. That's all, the culture of around sports, not just news, but gaming, shoes, fashion, that kind of stuff, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And this weekend, just jumping into it, this weekend we saw some great things. That was a good event that we went to. We went to one a couple weekends ago just to see the field. It was the first one we've ever been to as a brand, trying to figure it out and see what's out there. And we went to this one. We had a whole setup. I actually didn't know how it's going to go because I've never seen something like this, right? And I haven't really been to the Sneaker Expo was the second sneaker show I've ever been to, but just seeing, like I said, it's just seeing the feedback we got. Like everybody was like, oh wow, this is like nobody's ever done this before. And these people are people who have been to these sneaker cons and sneaker exits, which are some of the biggest trades out there. But really, I want to give a shout out to what were they called? Sneaker Expo.
They're the Social Sneaks Expo.
Yeah, for allowing us to get that set up. Because, they gave us a good spot. We got that set up. But let's jump into it and how it works. So we got there. It was actually an idea that we were talking about. We went to the Sneaker Eggs and we're like, what can we do different? How do we create content? Instead of just doing what everybody's doing of just walking around and asking questions and going to tables and conversation, we're like, how can we stand out or how can we be that differentiator in the world of the sneaker culture and the fashion and the sports? And we're like, why don't we just set up a podcast booth, basically? Instead of everybody's going to have tables of shoes, why don't we just set up a booth? And we did. And as we were setting up, people were already coming, when can we interview? I remember people literally just coming up to me, can I be next? And I was like, I got like 2 people in front of you. You got to give me, and just going back and forth. But that was cool. But it was the conversations you have with some of these people. We were talking to people from very young age. I met a guy that was just got into college, was playing junior college as a D2, and this is how he makes some cash flow to keep things going. I talked to a kid that was 13. I talked to guys that are not even resellers there. They're just, the guy just loves it since 1990 something.
Yeah.
He's been loving shoes and he has a huge collection. Then I talked to guys that has a barbershop and owns a clothing line and owns a sneaker. So it's like you met so much and you had so much conversation, and to hear how all these people come from different backgrounds or have different ways and different whys on what they're doing it for. Mm-hmm. So I think that event was actually, I found it very successful. So
we had a lot of great conversations, but let's step back to what we did, right? A little bit.
Correct.
So the problem we were trying to solve is we wanted to create a lot of content. Mm-hmm. We wanted to do it in an environment that was different. We had been to the sneaker exit a couple weeks back, which is a bigger one that was at the Charlotte Convention Center. They travel around the U.S. and they do these conventions, and all these different sneaker shoes companies come in, clothing lines come in, and they set up booths. And so we went to that. We recorded some content. It went well, and then we're like, the next one came up. We're like, we're not selling shoes. We're not selling clothing, and so we weren't there. We were there more to kind of just experience it on the first one, and then this one was like, all right. When we start looking at the cost to set up a booth, it wasn't really that crazy. It was like $160, and that came with 4 tickets, right? And for us, VIP tickets to get in early, get set up, and they ended up in a way that we broke in because we weren't sure, like, really if they wanted us to do it or not, right? So we reached out to the people running the show, and we said, hey, look, we're coming there to create content. We're going to create content, and we'll give you clips when we've got them done. We'll send you the content as well so you guys can have it. And they're like, all right, sweet, come on in. Man, they rolled out the red carpet for us. They set us up, they gave us an option of a perfect spot right when everyone's walking in so they see us. And so that week, all within a week, and one key with this is execution, right?
Exactly.
So when you're running a business, execution matters because ideas are great, execution wins. And we decided to do this, and so the team just deployed. Everyone was like, all right, what do we got to get done? And everyone was working to the common goal. So we got banners ordered to have a backdrop. We figured out, we got some turf to lay on the floor to make it look like a field. So Ash and Z, and Michaela here in the office, they all kind of ran with it, which was really awesome. But what we did, anyways, we go back to this, the socialsneaks.expo. And as we were there, we ended up reaching out. We set up and we basically rent a booth and set up a podcast studio at this event.
Yep.
And so the exposure that we got in just that community was pretty cool. So 8 or 9 interviews, walk around content, people wondering like who the heck we are. So we had the QR code up there so they could scan it. Z built out a whole giveaway page. So the goal of it was doing something different that has not been done, that we have seen done or noticed was being done, and that got validated by everybody coming to us saying, wow, we've not seen this before. So when you're building $1 million audiences, how can you break into the environment? How can you create content? How can you do something unique that will help you grow your audience, help you build what you need to, but also get the content, unique content that your audience is going to want?
Yeah, I mean, our goal was get the unique content, but we also grew our subscriber list, our newsletter subscriber list. We grew our following. And I think the biggest thing that we keep saying it was the curveball was the difference. Because all these people probably have been interviewed before, but they get that walk up, right? People walk up, they get a mic and all that stuff. But we were different. We actually had these people where they sit down. They had the cameras on them. They felt important. I felt like at that moment, like when you sit down and you're being interviewed, you're feeling important, right? When someone calls you over, hey, I want you to sit down with us. We're going to ask you. It's like you're feeling important, man. This feels awesome. Yeah. And a lot of people were saying it. So I think the biggest takeaway of all of it is, yes, audience and everything, but to do all this, you always don't try to go do what everybody else is doing. That's what we didn't do. And I think that's what helped us with our success here.
Well, it helped too that we aren't reselling sneakers and in the
correct
game. But what is one thing you would have done different?
Looking back to it, we've spoken it already on some things, right? We're not saying we hit it right off the bat with the home run. Like, there's stuff that we can definitely done better. I think something we would have done different is schedule it out a little more, because there was a lot more people who wanted to jump into the interview and wanted to do more with us. We ran out of time, basically, and some of them wanted to do it like at closing. And when you're there basically all day and you're talking to everybody, you don't want to – when it's time to wrap up, you don't now start wanting doing interviews. You're going to be tired, but – I think it's just scheduling better, getting these people to try to get in more people, because I think we could have, but we just ran out of time.
Yeah. I think so. We had a pretty good kind of setup. With cameras and mics, and we had to figure all that out during the week. Well, how do we make sure, because there's always music playing at these, how do we make sure we get good audio, good video, and be able to leverage that content? So I think, with you right on, it's like getting stuff scheduled out. I think making one thing that we did that we could have done better is we did not, of all the marketing that I've done over all the years, and I realized that as soon as we set up the booth, we didn't have one single call to action.
We didn't.
We had no offer and we had no call to action when we were there. We could have used the banners to say, hey, to promote the free giveaway.
Yeah, we had an offer. We just didn't have
we did. You couldn't see it unless you talked to us about it. So we could have done a better job with our copy on creating the offer to get people to engage. Because a lot of people walked by, just looked at us. Not everyone pulled out their phone and did QR code. So I would have done a much better job, a better call to action to scan the QR code to get them to the giveaway page to grow the subscriber base. That's one thing I think we would improve. But other than all, man, it was all in all, it was a great first, I think, podcast pop-up for Sportsbred.
So Nate said, "Hey, are you guys ready? We're going to go to the big one in Miami." We're like, "Whoa!" No, I'm just kidding.
No, not yet.
That would be hectic. That would definitely. We'll need a couple more of these, couple more small, medium-sized ones before we go take a big boy like that. But no,
I guess awesome. We're not going big or go home.
I mean, go big or go home, yes. But I think the go big here, just that one itself not being nowhere near as big as what like a sneaker con will bring to the table was like a lot already. So imagine like trying to do one where there's like hundreds of thousands of people and not just thousands. So
yeah, and at that point then you got a bigger camera crew, you got more stuff going on. I think, we probably need more than the Mevos and stuff that we got rolling, but it worked out, man. It did. Sometimes it's fun having, that makeshift flow. So that rolls us into the next thing. So Sportsbred online, sportsbred.com. Go. Yep. You guys want to follow along with our journey as we build that out and see how that evolves. As you want to learn how to build audiences, you want to learn how to manage newsletters, head on over there and check that out. Now let's get in.
Real quick before you say that, and there's also a giveaway. You guys can also sign up for the giveaway. The giveaway is just not for people who are in the sneaker culture, all that. It's if you like shoes. I mean, and I think everybody does because we all wear them. Just sign up. You can go to our social media and go to our website. Just sign up. All it takes is put in your email, and you'll be into the giveaway. So
absolutely. And then so that rolls right into behind the marketing. And one thing I wanted to do today is talk about a framework, the framework of building out your own newsletter. So there's a process to it. It's a similar process we went through with Sportsbred. We went through Financial Maverick, other brands we've talked about on here. So I wanted to give that framework to you as one of our listeners so you have the ability to go out and start researching this yourself. Build out your own if you want. Message me if you got information on you want to learn more info as well. So the first part, and it's a 4-part framework, right? Mm-hmm. So the first part is, are you going to offer your own product and service, or are you going to be an affiliate that offers – an affiliate allows other people's products and services to be promoted in your newsletter, right? So when I first got in the marketing space, I always had the product. And when I first got – actually, I take that back. When I first got in, it was affiliate products. My second launch was my own product. And for years, I did my own product. Built the agency, came back. You guys, all that story. But what we do is selling other people's products, right?
Correct.
So for us, there's 2 ways of going about it. If you have your own products and services and you want to generate more customers long term, build a newsletter out and then always promote your products and services inside of there. But when you have that audience, there's also another revenue stream a lot of these people don't use, and that is selling other people's products. And that is how we generate revenue with our media company, is other people pay to get access to our audiences. So you got to first determine, what do you want, right?
Mm-hmm. But Nate, real quick before we keep jumping into it, not sure if you want me to speak on it, but I know you're in the works on something to help the audience actually have like a written copy of some of the stuff that you're talking about, which is your book I know you're working on. Yep. So if you guys, we're going to talk about it here, but that book that Nate's writing, that book right there itself, it's that, $1 million audiences, that's $1 million book basically. Yeah. so there's ways we can work on it, but
not to be mistaken with Mike Fallett, who owns $1 Million books. So,
yeah, correct. Yeah. There you go. But yeah, Nate, to go into it. So yeah, like Nate said, we do a lot of work with both, and it's interesting to see it, right? Because I feel like there's benefits into it, right? If I was a product or service, I would probably go to a company. If I was, let's say I'm selling clothes, I would go to a company. I won't go to any company too, right? You got to know your audience, where you're going. You can't just come to us because our newsletter audience might not be what it is for you, but I would go to a company like us because I don't feel you're not going to go out there. You're not spending $20,000 on Facebook ads. Mm-hmm. I feel that's very cost effective. But then in the other sense of what you just said of building the frame of having people, having people like us. That's how we generate revenue. It's not as easy as it seems though, because you got to build these audiences first to get engaged. You can't really try to sell in a 5,000 person audience. That's like, correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yeah, well, I think so. We'll get into that, right? And that's part of the framework. But you can, if you're looking to, if you own your product and service, you can go out to companies such as us and actually buy advertising space, assuming we have a brand that has your customers and your kind of perfect customers within it, right? So you can definitely do that, and it's a great way to start. But if you have your own products and brands, you can also create your own newsletter just to keep people up to date on what's going on inside the company, inside the brands, inside the industry that you're in, right?
Okay.
Become a curator. So you can do both. And you can work in both of those angles, right?
Gotcha.
Now, with that, though, products, so determine what you how do you want to monetize and make money? Because business is great, but business without money is not great. So, it's a simple mathematical equation.
But there's different ways to make money in this I would
correct
like industry or way of media. You have your CPAs offer. You can do. I know we've done a little bit of some CPCs. We do what we do now. Some of this revenue. So there's different ways to create money. But which one would you say is the most sustainable way?
So, each way of generating revenue has its own challenges. We have done, I think it depends on the niche that you're in. So, for example, in our political space, a lot of that stuff is CPM. So they're just paying X amount for a newsletter to be sent for them with their information, right? The way that we're attacking the financial space is the opposite of that, though.
Correct.
Where customers and clients are paying us on a cost per lead basis. So we're building relationships with companies that pay a very nice fee to send them a lead. And so a good sizable lead. So what we are doing in that avenue is we are now monetizing traffic as well, arbitraging traffic. They know that they can't get all the leads. So we build our brand, our financial brand's being built, and we're going to send them our customers as well. They're going to pay us. We got stuff that pays $5 cost per click. So if we send them a click, we get paid $5. We got stuff, if they fill out a web form, they pay us up to $150, right? So there's a big range of how you monetize it, and and that's performance marketing.
Correct.
Right? So we're moving the financial side, we're moving more into that realm. So every industry is a little bit different, and it's what works best for you.
Exactly. Right? So that was the next question I was going to ask is what would you recommend for someone who they don't have these 150,000 big subscribers? What would you recommend for them to start in?
Yeah, you can just, as you're growing it, do it as a affiliate.
Okay.
So a CPA model or cost per lead, cost per, sale. Do it in that avenue to start as you grow. And then you'll have a couple advertisers as you continuously grow your newsletter. You got a couple advertisers that you can consistently convert for you. And so you just rotate them out throughout the weeks but the key is that you're growing your newsletter, you're adding new subscribers. So I would start in that realm, because what can happen then from there is those advertisers will eventually buy. You can go to them when you're sending an X amount of volume and say, hey, let's cut a CPM deal.
Exactly. So we get into it a lot here and building these $1 million audiences, but how do you grow it? Like, how do you let me put it this way. I don't know if you want to spill all the beans yet, but what would be some recommendations for someone who wants to do this, but where do they start to grow the subscriber base?
Well, there's a couple news. I'll give you guys one example that you can go out and do. So there's been quite a few newsletters right now that have grown off the back of Twitter. So what they do is they go on Twitter, they post about their topic and everything else that they're doing, and they become content creators on Twitter, and then they drive people back into their newsletter. So that's a very fast way that you can do that.
Okay.
And what's really good about that, though, is so the second step of the framework. So we got 4 steps to it, right? So we covered the product and affiliate. Now we got research audience, and the research audience and content, right? Okay. So Twitter, if you're going to go that route, will allow you to test messaging, see what's getting engaged with as you grow it, communicate with others in the space to bring that engagement back to you, and then know what kind of content they engage with so you can start plugging that into your newsletter, right? So in researching, what does your audience actually want to hear and want to engage with, right? So as you research that audience, you want to figure that out. Like, do they want to talk about the overall arching? Like, financials kind of, there's a wide range of financial stuff, right? So we can talk housing, we can talk crypto, we can talk equities, right? There's so many different things that you can get into in the financial market, and there's newsletters that are specific to each one of those as well. Yeah. So you can get into decide who your customer is, what is it they want to learn about and engage with, and how you're going to be the curator and the content creator for them, right?
Yeah, I mean, we ran into it last week. We had a meeting with this one company where they have they basically have specific, what would you call a CPA when we had that meeting, where you can, if you have a specific, let's say you are a home mortgage company and you want to build a newsletter on just mortgage, they have like offers that you can put into your newsletters to generate that small income of revenue or big income. You never know, right? So yeah, that's pretty cool. But research, we talked about it earlier. One thing that I always think about when we talk into research is, I think some of the biggest failures in marketing is when people go after not the audience, not the, what would you say, the consumer, not the people that are interested. You don't find the interested people, right? So let's say you have a financial offer, but you're throwing in sportswear or you're throwing in cooking, that's not where your audience signed up for your newsletter. Like, you got to stick to what it is. If you want to build a cooking newsletter, build something different and just move them over, like we've done plenty of times. So researching, I think, is really important to be able to grow with this, because if not, you're just going to continue. It's not going to perform for you, and it's a killer.
Yeah. So you got to research, you got to dive in, and you got to ask, right? So one thing that we do in our stuff is we have polls. Oh, the polls allow them to engage, and for us, there's a whole training I did back in the day, polls to profits, like leveraging polls, generating revenue, and it's the polls in themselves are getting the engagement that you need, and also not only just engagement that you want in your newsletter, but it also gives you a pulse on what they like and what they don't like, what they want to learn about, all that stuff, right? So super easy way to get them involved. So after you go, so not only do you have your research on the front, and you have your consistent research while you're writing your newsletter and sending your newsletter out, right? And then after that, let's talk about design, right? Because once you figure out who you're going to build your newsletter around, and frankly, it could be a topic that you love talking about, that you build your newsletter around, but be careful. Make sure there's a large enough audience that's as weird as you to talk about that all the time. So when you put it out there, they are paying attention, and you can grow that audience, right?
I think I've been one of the biggest ones to run to design issues. I've designed probably 3 or 4, and the last one I designed was a military one we're working on, and Nate looks up at the screen, goes, "What is up with that green?" And it just didn't go well. Like, I got what he was saying. I'm not a designer. I throw it in there, but I've designed a couple. I think my best one was actually Financial Maverick. As of now, Financial Maverick has been the best newsletter I designed.
It was your first one, dude. Your home run.
My home run, and then everything else has gone downhill. But designing is important. It is important, and it's not just designing, but it's the way you lay the stuff out, right? Because Nate's taught me a lot of, you got to lay out what people first catch interesting in the beginning, right? Because if they catch it interesting, they'll keep working their way down. And some of the things that I was doing is I was probably putting some of the lamest stuff that I thought was interesting, but when Nate looked at it, he's like, "Hey, our audience won't find that interesting at the top." And we corrected it and we fixed it. And yeah, so I think for me, my biggest issue that I can probably say, and a lot of people will run into it if they're trying to do this, is the layout of it, is knowing what needs to be up top and what doesn't. And Nate, how do you I know you know your audience very well, so how did you figure out, like, this is what I need to put here and this is what I got to leave at the bottom?
I kind of look at it as, a lot of times, if it's a newsletter that I'm interested in, I look at it on how, two ways, right? Two things. Like, one is, I've been in the direct response marketing space, and I've been sending emails since 2000. I think I sent my first one in 2007. I actually believe it was, right? It was when I first started getting emails. So I've sent a lot of emails over the years and tested different stuff and had copywriters and written them myself and done newsletters, done just direct response emails. So, like, I've done a bunch of it. So I think it's the years of experience that's kind of helped me with that. But then sometimes too, I look through the lens of, like, how would I like to read this? Does it look good? Does it look good on mobile? Does it look good on desktop?
Correct.
And so integrating some direct response principles to get them to engage. And we talked about micro commitments, right? Yeah. And In a newsletter, Article 1, Article 2,
Exactly.
Article 3, right? So, there's that side of it, the direct response side, but it's also looking at what do I think would be engaging when I get it in my email and read, through that newsletter. So, and then on top of that, another way for you to go look at it is chances are you will not be the first person to create a newsletter, an audience in the niche that you want to go in. It's what you focus on expands. I'll never forget how many times, many times I have gone and created this. I'm like, I'm going to go create this. It's going to be amazing. Everybody's going to want it. And then I'm like, all of a sudden, I'm like, I've not seen anyone do it. And then all of a sudden, because I'm so focused on it, I'm like, oh, wait, this person's doing it. Oh, wait, this person's doing it.
Everyone's doing it now.
Yeah, so you start seeing it, right? What you focus on expands. So I think design-wise, when you go out there, you can start seeing what other people in that industry are doing and how they're laying things out. A lot of times you'll find people are just half-assing it, and they're not doing a very good job of it, and you can make it better.
Correct.
Right? So
none of this is out there. None of this is cost. None of this costs a lot of money. Where we run our stuff, it's we can design it ourselves. It's very user friendly. Mm-hmm. You just have to play around with it a bit. But I mean, we've done some pretty cool stuff off of the Beehive stuff. That's the one I've worked with the most. Some of the designs there and the way they lay it out for you is just, it's simple. Yep. It's simple. You just got to play around with it, understand it, and then it's ready to go. So it's definitely helped us. And I think Financial Maverick, the design of that one, even our American Centrist one, every design is different, of course, to their newsletter, right? So the way we decided American Centrist, we had a competitor, and we looked at it, and we're like, okay, this is what they're doing. It's working out. And we're like, we're not going to copy it to the T, but there's stuff we can, right? Like you say, don't change. What's the saying that you have?
I don't know. What one?
The one of the don't change the wheel. What is it?
Oh, if it ain't broken, don't fix.
Yeah, something like that. So we did that, and same with but Financial Maverick's design is completely different. Yeah. Financial Maverick's design is loaded with emojis and pictures, and it's fun.
Too many emojis originally.
Yeah, so little backstory. So when I first designed Financial Maverick, it was emojis and pictures and stuff everywhere. Nate looked at it, he's like, I loved it, but too many emojis. So we started cutting off, and then I built another one that also had emojis, and he's like, you got to stop using emojis. So actually lately have not been using emojis on any of the designs. So we cut through it, but yeah, design is I think design's really cool. That's the first thing people see is the colors, the popping.
Yeah. So in the 4-part framework, right, you've got choose whether it's your product or someone else's product you're promoting. That's part 1 of the framework. Part 2, you got to get into researching your audience, and then in the content, and then you have to. Part 3 is the actual content you're putting in and the design of the newsletter. So finalizing that, and then part 4 is the growth plan. So starting out, sending a newsletter, you're gonna be like, I don't have anyone on my newsletter. I'll tell you what, shoot that over to 5 people that like, and trust. They're going to subscribe. When I first sent I tell people all the time, I don't care if you're just sending a newsletter to your mom. If she's the only subscriber you got, send it. There's a lot of times I post, and my mom's the first one commenting,
Exactly.
On stuff. So I think, if your mom's your only subscriber, send it and get in the rotation of doing it daily. But the growth plan is, so once you get that consistent, the growth plan is how do you want to grow it? Do you want to run ads? Do you want to do collabs? Are you going to, the strategy we talked about earlier, are you going to go create a Twitter handle, an account, and just post and drive organic reach over there to drive people back in? Are you, there's a lot of ways you can go about it. Are you going to partner with another newsletter, maybe that's in your niche, that they can email for you and drive your subscribers for you as well, right?
So there's definitely a lot of different ways to grow it. What would you say is the most successful one you've seen?
Well, the one that I like the most, once you get into it, is just paid ads, because it's once you have it built, and the way that we built a lot of our original audiences were strictly from buying ads. We were buying emails, we were buying Facebook ads, Google ads, all kinds of stuff that we could scale that as fast as possible. I think if you're just starting out, it depends what your budget is.
And also there's one thing to growth. You also don't want to grow too fast and mistakenly, because we made that mistake in the beginning of the year, where we accidentally imported 18,000. You remember that mistake into one of the newsletters, and not saying if people are signing up and putting their newsletter and you're running ads, good, but if you buy a list,
correct. Yeah, so let's correct it. We were moving from one system to a new system. So let's be careful what we say here. Yeah. We don't want people just going out and buying a subscriber base and throwing them into an email thing. And these are So don't do that. And a lot of people have asked me like, "Hey, I bought 1 million real estate agent, emails. What can I do with it?" I was like, "I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I guess you could spam them, but I don't recommend it." So we were moving our contacts from one email platform to a new one, and it takes time when you have a new domain to warm it up. All the tech, we don't get into all the tech side of it, but we imported too many at one point, which caused an issue with deliverability. So we had to recover from that.
Correct. So the whole point of this is if you go out there trying to grow your email list by buying an email list, don't import them all at once and just send them one email, because might as well just bump that away.
Yeah.
It's done and over with. So
a good way, though, I would say is partnering. If you want to grow quickly, I'd go find other people with newsletters in the spaces that you're in, pay them to send an email for you, let the subscribers subscribe into your newsletter, right? That's
what's a typical budget you see people spending on this kind of stuff? Is it depending on what you have, or is there a budget you recommend people like, hey, this has seen success?
It completely ranges.
Okay.
We just signed an insertion order with a company that has this audience, Uncommon Advice audience, and we paid them $2,500. So they are going to send a couple sponsorships for us and some other stuff directly for our offer to their audience. So we've got that. And then I've talked to, on the political side, I had a conversation that for 1.5 million emails, they wanted to do they were doing a special of 3,600. We have done stuff where we've paid $1,000. You've done stuff where I've paid $5,000, and the more those numbers, those were for test.
Gotcha.
Because you want to test stuff on the email paid traffic to make sure it works. Once it works, you want to make sure that they have enough subscribers that you can scale.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, though, what happens is newsletters don't grow their subscription base, so eventually they get ad blindness, right? Offer blindness. They see your stuff enough, they just stop responding. So it's a diminishing investment. Gotcha. So, and we just had this conversation, right? Yeah. So we are working on a growth plan with bringing more advertisers in, and we're trying to figure out what's that sweet spot. Mm-hmm. If we sell them a $25,000 advertising package, but we're going to get them average performance where we can get them amazing performance at a $15,000 ad package, and they're going to buy 15 every month, where if we sell them 25, we're dealing with unhappy clients and everything else. So there's a balance in that every month too. And we just know with our growth and our ability where we're at, we give them the package that's best for them.
I mean, and you've had success doing this, because I know you've mentioned you in the past have spent $50 to $100K a month, right, on ads.
Yeah, we've been up to $150,000 a month.
$150,000 a month on ads. Again, like Nate said, you don't have to do this to start, but I'm betting with that you probably saw a huge influx of emails and leads coming in that were just killing.
Very mature. The newsletters and reputations of those brands are very mature to where you can sustain 5,000, 10,000 leads a day.
And those were a lot better leads than just going out and buying an email list, right?
Well, we've never gone out and just bought an email list.
Okay.
So some people will go out and go to these data businesses and say, I want all the real estate. I don't recommend doing that. Leads that we have purchased that over the time has been through paid ads.
Okay.
Whether it's email, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Google, whether it's through co-reg, there's a lot of ways that you can get traffic, and that's how we do it. I've never gone to somebody and say, hey, I'll buy 100,000 subscribers from you in this space, and then just started emailing them. I would highly recommend against doing that.
Because you can run into a lot of
issues. Spam cam, you got spam issues, you got upset customers, you got brand reputation, you're going to burn your domain. And so you're trying to build $1 million audience. And, as you build this $1 million audience through newsletters, you have zero. Once that brand domain is ruined, you're working really hard to get it back online to be able to get to the inbox. If you have a newsletter and you're not getting the inbox, it's completely irrelevant whether you have a newsletter or not.
So question right here before I know we move on to the next one. You mentioned if you have a brand domain, let's say someone does do this and it does impact that performance, would you just cut it and start a new brand and try to put those leads in there and actually do it the right way? Or would you try to fight to get that back up and running? Or does it depend on where you're at with that brand?
So I think it depends where we're at with the brand.
Okay.
What revenue is it generating? Is sometimes newsletters can just die off. Mm-hmm. And now it depends on it, right? So when we learned in the very beginning, actually the first 2 newsletters that I ever started are still some of our better performers. So the top 4 that I have are we still have 3 of the first 4 that we started.
Okay.
And we've got a handful of brands that we've had for a long time. And I think it's being focused on the deliverability and everything else. But we've had brands we've built up. They've not performed well, and we've just cut them.
Gotcha.
And tried to move into other avenues. But ideally, you're building a brand that's sustainable long-term, that can grow, and it becomes brand recognition for people because of the performance is really good when they are buying traffic from you. But we have cut brands. I would recommend if you build a brand, try and scale that one as big as possible.
But what happens if you build, you're with the brand, but you do some stupidity issue of inbox loading in 30,000 or 40,000 leads and trying to send it all, and then you hurt your domain? Is it an easy process to get this fixed, or is this a...
No?
Okay.
Yeah, and then, I mean, if you have that problem, DM me. Let me know you got that problem. I can hopefully get you a few tips to help you. But first off, that's a rookie mistake if you're going to do that.
Yep.
And I've done it as experience, actually. So sometimes it's just clicking the wrong button. But so I've done it as well. But I would say you don't want to be buying leads and putting them in. Okay. If they're subscribers, they're your subscribers. If they're not your subscribers, they're not your subscribers, right? So I think so with the growth plan, you just got to determine what's best for you and your budget and go from there. Now, when I got into the newsletter space, we actually went in and put $300,000 in and said, we're going to grow this as fast as possible. So that was our plan, right? We knew we're going to hit this hard. We're going to scale it really quick, and we're going to grow really fast. And so I've done that. And I would say that we're doing with Sportsbred is the complete opposite. We're not putting a $300,000 advertising budget behind Sportsbred.
No, we haven't.
We're doing it more content driven and building it more organically. Yeah. And then we'll ultimately get into some paid ads here soon as well, which we're getting ready to start up. So, but we won't have that large of a budget like we did in the original side of what we were building the first time. So it's a different plan, different strategy for that brand.
If you don't mind me asking, and I don't know if you know the number off the top, in that $300,000 budget you guys started off with, how many leads did you guys generate? Do you know that number estimate?
So we when we were done with that $300,000 ad budget, we had 4 newsletters that all had close to 100,000 people on it.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was good timing.
So basically, if you would have had one newsletter, you would have had.
I would love to say I'm a genius, but it was you know the only reason that we scaled so fast is because I researched the market, I listened to the right people, and I executed. And I knew what the audience wanted. So that very front end piece, when we talked about, I knew what products and affiliates we were going to promote.
You did your research?
I did the research. I had the design down. Like I had it all the basics figured out, and we were able to scale. And I also knew the market was really, really strong.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not like I just, woke up and hit gold and, one day. I did the research on the front end to know what we were going to do, and we knew what return we were pretty confident in the return we were going to get out.
And you've only 2021, right? That
was 2020.
2020. So it's 2020. So it's 3 years. Mm-hmm. And all of our newsletters basically are pretty up there now. We have what are we at to now? 12, I think.
Yeah. On the political side, we're at 12.
12, correct. Yeah. And then total, 16. Wow.
Yeah, so we're growing
from 4 to 16.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. But hey, guys, yeah, we'll look for the book. The book is coming soon.
Oh, don't put the pressure on me. I got to write it now. So, all right. So we'll talk more about that later.
I thought you had ChatGPT writing.
No, definitely not. It'll be me. So I want to jump into the uncommon advice segment here, and I want to talk about a lot of things some top things that have impacted my business and my life personally. Some of the things and changes that I made, and you can add some that for you that I have as well. And reason being is I feel like in business, there's this, when building a business, a lot of people talk about virtual, and I've lived it. In 2009, I put everything in storage, and my wife, Susan and I, not wife at the time, but now my wife, we drove around the country and just did VRBOs because Airbnb wasn't a thing yet. So vacation rental by owner was online. So we would rent a house for a month and then go live in that city for a month. We did that for 9 months. The goal of figuring out like where we wanted to live when we got married. And we didn't visit. We visited two cities that we actually thought we would live in, and the rest of them were just, towns to hang out in. So
did you end up living in those two cities?
Well, one was Charleston. So we narrowed it down to three. It was Austin, Texas, Charleston, South Carolina, or Charlotte, North Carolina. And we came back to Charlotte where we originally met. So,
Gotcha.
And so, yeah, we've been happy here. But even though we've tried to leave a couple times since, keep coming back.
San Diego, come back.
Yeah. So these are things along the years. So I've lived that virtual life. I've lived the digital nomad, where I've basically worked from a laptop anywhere I was at in the country, even in the world when we did some international travel. So I've done all that. And I think there's a lot of people that strive for that, but there's also a lot of people who are more like me who I enjoyed it, but I wouldn't want to live it consistently. I enjoy actually having stability of a spot to be at, right?
And
so,
Nate, real quick before you move on, you said you enjoy, but you wouldn't want to do it consistently. Why is that?
I love the freedom.
Okay.
I enjoy the freedom of being able to take my laptop and go work. So I'm leaving out of town. I'm flying to Ohio here shortly for a charity event that we do every year. And last year we raised $500,000. So I'll report back what we raised this year and for charity. So it'll be pretty cool. It keeps growing every year. The first year was 150, then 500. So we'll see. Maybe we'll hit $1 million this year. It'd be pretty cool. For me, I can go there, I can get my work done and still help out with that cause, right? So I like the freedom of that.
Gotcha.
I like knowing that, when I go see my family in Hawaii, I can still get stuff done. So we're built out virtually as a company with the ability to work anywhere in the world. Mm-hmm. But for me, I personally like being in an office, right? I like coming in. I'm a creature of habit. I like my process. I like when I find a coffee shop, I go to that coffee shop. When I find a restaurant I go to that restaurant.
But it's funny because now things have changed. And I mean, again, after COVID, this was probably part of a big factor, but remote, it got to a point where people was like, if it's not remote work, we're not working for you.
Yeah. And I think, while that was happening, my team at that point, my entire team was remote already. Mm-hmm. So we just recently in 2021 is when I believe let's see, 21, 22. Yeah, so in 21, I leased this space that we're in now, shooting this video and shooting this podcast. And August of 21, so we've been in here for almost 2 years now. But I wanted to get back in office because everybody was trying to go remote.
Yeah.
I like to do the opposite. But at the same time, too, my kids at that time were being homeschooled. Working at home and trying to separate the two just never worked for me. Some people it works great for. Just never worked for me. I knew that if we got in office and we started building a team out here, we could build a culture, right? A company culture, because I set some big kind of goals of where we needed to go in the next 5 years. And I had been trying to reach those goals in the last 5 years being virtual, and it wasn't working. Just not working for me. Doesn't mean it won't work for you, but it didn't work for me. And, so what I wanted to do was, one of the big changes for me was leasing a space and leasing an office space for growth to be able to get the right people in here, right? So with the whole remote, we're jumping into the virtual and the remote thing. So I guess kids more, I'd say, closer to my age. Calling yourself a kid?
Not
Come on
kids.
now.
Well,
young adult.
Young adults. I don't know what you call my. What am I? What am I? Gen Z. I don't even know what I am.
Stop putting labels on yourself.
Whatever they call my group's generation is. I know a lot of friends who are remote workers, and if you talk to them, it's like, if I can't go remote, I would leave my job. Like that mindset. For me, I don't like that mindset. I like coming into the office. I don't complain. I have a break. Love my house. Love my fiance. Love my dogs. But there's a point that you always just you know what? You got your own space.
Yeah. Your
own little freedom. So I agree with you. I like the freedom too, but I always like knowing that I can come here and this is where I'm gonna get at home. I work still. I go home at night and I do work, but when I come here, it's it's different. It's a different feeling. It's just better. I think it's just better.
And for me, it's a place I can go. I can turn on and turn off. Mm-hmm. So I've got kids, so I don't really like being on a laptop working when I'm at home anyways. And my kids are active doing things. So usually when I shut it down here, I'm at a football practice, or my daughter's got cheer or horseback, and there's all these things that my kids do that we're spending that time helping them and, getting them to those things as opposed to only going home and sitting on a laptop, right?
And then during the pandemic, you didn't have it. You didn't have this in 2020. Did you I felt like when I was finished working remote, I'll be done working. It's like, oh, I'm done, and I'm okay. Now I'm staying at home. It's like you don't leave.
So I had I had an office in San Diego.
Okay.
And the team was virtual, but I still went and got my own office, right? And instead of working from home, but I had that office, and I was literally the only one there, the entire building. I would go knowing that I was the only one in the building.
And you did not care.
No, I was the only one there. Yeah. No, you know what I mean? So, so I did that and still kind of got out and got that space to be able to get that stuff done. So, but the key to that, so that's huge for me, having an office space to go to work at, turn things on, turn things off, and stay hyper focused. And I preach in here too. And you just said you work at home, and I appreciate that you do, and I appreciate that. But I also want people, when they come in here, I want them to turn it on and turn it off.
Correct. And you've said it
because I'm a firm believer that you have to have your own time outside of work. Don't get me wrong. There's times that we need to grind and we got to put time in, like we got to work. But there's also times like if we do that nonstop day in, day out, you're just going to get burnout. And so I know that. And so on weekends, I want you to take your time. Go chill.
Correct.
Right?
Well, I mean, I know there's been times where I'm like, oh, no, I'll just write this here tonight. He's like, so then it's good to do it once or twice, but you start doing it, you're just going to burn yourself out.
Yeah.
And you've said that to me plenty of times. So,
So I also do believe having an office, I'm not the corporate mindset. It's more of a spot we can come be productive, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so that's the number one, is having a space. The second thing that's improved the quality of business and life for me is hiring great people. So hiring the right people. And so this kind of kudos to you and the team that we're building, because you're now helping build that team, right, as we rush in. So it's with a lot of times, many years in my entrepreneurial career, I would hire someone to fill the role to kind of just take stuff off my plate, but I never managed it, never did it, and sometimes never even delegated it. So I would just hiring someone just because I felt like I needed someone.
Yeah. And
so now we're hiring strategically the right people that can help with our mission and our goal of where we're going. And I think that's been and that's recent for us in regards to quality of business and life, because one, I'm not coming home, complaining about how someone wasn't productive in the office or didn't get something done that day, probably because I didn't train them the proper way to do it. And then get mad at them for not knowing how to do it, right? So I've had to hiring the right people. I come home now and I'm talking about how the day was great and what we accomplished and the things that were going on, which if you're married, there's a big impact if you're coming home and being positive versus coming home and being negative.
Absolutely.
And many years ago, Susan I'd be talking to her and she goes, just fire him. I was like, what do you mean? She goes, you only discuss the people that are annoying you and that need to be fired. So just fire them.
Just let them go.
Thanks, honey.
No,
so I think, and now it's my environment in my home is completely different if I'm coming home and I'm being like, oh, we worked on this. This is so cool and this is exciting. And, the team, one thing is, hey, the team ran with this project, And
I mean, big shout out to the team, right? We have, we as a company, our goal is to continue to grow here in-house, but we do have employees that do work in different areas. We have people in Miami. We have someone who lives about an hour and a half from the office. We have people in Hawaii. So we have people who work in different areas, but shout out to the whole team. I mean, they've been doing a great job, and we just brought in a new employee. Her name's Michaela, and she's been killing it. She's been here 2 weeks, and she's just like
she just started week 2.
Yeah. Week 2, so she's just knocking out of the park. So I agree with you.
Shh,
100%.
Don't tell her yet.
I agree with you 100% on that, because when you and we've talked about this before, right? Like, and you've told us, like, I don't expect you every day is not going to be, you're not going to give your 100%, right? There's some days that something might be going on, you might be off, and those are normal. But like you said, I never get home and you don't hear negatives. And when you work in a good environment, it's going to grow. Now, when you're in a negative environment, you're looking at the clock and like, all right, 4:30, all right, 4:35, and you just want to get out.
Yeah.
So I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, and I think so that's big. the right people, right environment. And it's funny, even step back on why we have an office, like people walk in too and like, oh man, this is nice. You know, we always get a lot of compliments. And it's funny, we'll have like the football coaches come in sometimes for some meetings. They're like, what do you do? You know, what are you guys doing here? So I think it's, you know, having a nice space also is you're trying to attract local people stands out compared to if you're a local company saying, oh, you're going to work virtual.
Yeah.
Right.
And we have a fun culture here. I feel like we have fun. We have good conversations. And just to let you know, what Nate says about the office, we have like huge windows. Like, what do you say? Those like 12-foot windows? Like from like floor to the ceiling of just windows where you can see everything outside. It's beautiful.
A lot of natural light. That was big for me.
Yeah.
The space, because nothing than a dark, annoying room.
Yeah, it was funny because actually Michaela, when she got into her office, she was like, in my old office, I had no windows. It was a box. And that was me too in my other office. It was just a box.
Yeah. Well, the benefit of working here now is we still have some open office space. So joining now is your win.
Yeah, if you join late, you have no pick.
So I think the third thing that's had a big impact on me is staying hyper-focused on business and life. So I've got very clear on what we are as a company. And we build audiences through newsletters. We build digital brands, right? And that through newsletters that attract these big audiences. And that's what we do, and we're good at it. And we are able to curate the content. We're able to build the list. So like we're staying hyper focused on that. Whereas before I'd be a product company. We'd be a product company. We'd have a physical product. We have an education piece. We'd have like all these different things, right? So too many things going on to where once we got hyper focused on just building the newsletters and the audience, building audiences through newsletters, I guess is the best way to put it, has allowed us to grow quicker because everyone's marching towards the same beat.
Exactly. And I think we've also even had that issue where we have gone off topic and thought about an idea. Oh, what happens if we do this? And then we always take a step back. It's like, that's not what we're good at.
Yeah.
That's not what we do. We're not capable of doing it, or we've tried it and it didn't work. Why are we going to go back to it? So,
and if we stay focused, it keeps systems, processes, and everyone can get behind that mission, right? So I think that's, that has been a tremendous help with business and life to be able to stay super clear on that and just push forward.
Yeah.
So now we're looking, where are we at?
So real quick for the audience, Nate. So this goes back to the leadership and hiring the right people. What are some of the things people could put in place to hire the right people or to be better leaders, I would probably say?
So I think some of the things that I had to do, because this is the fourth thing. The fourth thing that has helped is becoming a better leader.
Oh, okay.
So that's the fourth thing. And I put a lot of time, energy, and effort into that. So one is, I think the biggest thing, and you and I just met, right? We just did like a 90-day review of like how things are going. And one of the things I put down as a note is I'm better at delegating. Yep. And so I think for me, it's trusting the people that you hire to do the job you hired them for.
Correct. Right.
And so I think being able to delegate and trust that it's going to get done, whereas I built everything all my companies in the past were built by me doing it in the trenches, designing, building, writing ads, all that stuff. So I still struggle some with giving that up. Mm-hmm. And I think that has been one thing that I've had to really, really work on is, and I alluded to it earlier, is like I would hire people in the past and I would barely tell them what to do and I'd expect them to get it done.
Yeah.
And so I think there's that. And then two, that's allowed me, by being able to delegate and get better at it, I've also kind of reset expectations to have more patience of, all right, mistakes are going to be made.
Correct.
We just got to fix it and move on. And I try and as I preach, it's like it's not executing and getting it wrong is not a problem with me. Not executing and not doing it is
a problem. Correct.
Right? So as long as we execute, even if we get it wrong, it doesn't matter because we execute it, because we can fix that.
So would you say a big reason you didn't hit your goals, like you said in the past, is it because you just try to do it all yourself?
I'd say that was part of it. It was a couple of things. One, I was in an industry. One is I was trying to do everything. Mm-hmm. Two, the way that I structured that business, I was all my clients called me. Even when they had account managers, they would never call their account manager. They would call me.
Oh.
So I had built myself to be this hub that everything had to go through. this bottleneck, I created it myself, right? And so this bottleneck that everyone had to go through. And so, and because of that, there was zero scalability once my time was maxed.
Gotcha.
Right. And so with what we have now, in 2020, when I decided to shut the agency down and build our own brands and build our own newsletters, invest in growing our new business, it was with the goal of not having to be run by me. It couldn't be built on my name, right? It had to be built on the actual brands that we build, which is why now you hear us talk about Financial Maverick, Sportsbred,
all those other
right?
brands.
American Centrist. These are brands, not individuals.
So
now I still have my individual brand that I create content with and I enjoy, and we've talked about why.
Yeah.
I do that, but.
So real quick, you said something that I don't think the audience has ever heard. I've heard it because you've told me, but I don't think. Why did that agency shut down? Like what was the fact? What was the deciding factor to say, all right, I'm done with the agency world?
So, yeah, I mean, the defining moment was on my 40th birthday. We were in Florida, living in San Diego, but flew to Florida for a trip. Susan, Kaden, and Lydia, the four of us were out for dinner on my birthday on a Saturday night, I believe it was. And I got a phone call from a client freaking out about how something got screwed up on their marketing funnel. Well, my personality is I was really, really frustrated that I couldn't enjoy a simple dinner on my 40th birthday, which apparently is supposed to be a big birthday, with my family. And it was one of those moments that got me so frustrated, but my personality is I'm going to get it fixed. That's just who I am. So then at that point, when I get back, I get it all fixed. But at that moment, I'm like, all right, well, it's all fixed. And I discovered that they screwed it up by tampering with the things they shouldn't have been tampering with, right? And so not only did they create the issue, they had zero respect for my time to go fix and wanted me to fix the issue instantly. And that happened a lot. And I just realized that as much as it happened a lot because I allowed it to happen, because my personality is bring it to me, I'll get it done, I'll get it fixed. Like I like to solve things, right? And a lot of times in my marriage, she was going to be like, I don't need you to solve this. So
stop.
And so it's just my personality. And I also have that, I want to make sure people are happy. I want to please, like, if I got clients, I want them happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
So it was, I created that environment, and the only way to get out of it, I had some amazing clients that were with me for years. So it was tough conversations, I think, to say, hey, look, it's probably tougher on me. Right, than it was them, but it was just because I was wanting to fulfill that. But I knew at that moment I would never get where I wanted to go and be happy. The only way to scale at that time, because I was not a very good leader, that I believe, and the only way to scale was to hire more people. And I did not see that. I didn't see myself going and having hundreds of people working with me.
You're like, I can do it.
To get where I want to go. But I do know that in the media company, we can get where we want to go with a great team, right?
Exactly.
So,
hey, but look where we are now. Right
now, growing.
Now we're growing. Now you're putting all that stuff into place, and
So
we're definitely getting there.
But yeah, so leadership. So to go back to that, right? The big thing is leadership. Do you focus on it? And I think one of the big shifts I made, which I credit to a buddy of mine, Trevor Mock, who owns a company called Carrot, which is a software company, and him and I were having a conversation one day and talking about leadership. And the question was, I was like, what was the big change for you? And he goes, I became a transformational leader instead of a transactional leader. And that really hit home with me because I was always transaction. Do this, task. Transformational. And now I'm by far not an expert at it. And I still revert back to my old ways sometimes. But focusing on what is our end result, where are we going, and where are we trying to get to, so the team can drive there, right? And not just be, Nate, what do I need to do today, right? It's here's our mission, let's go get it done. And so moving to transformational leader and focusing on constantly getting better at that,
correct,
has been had a huge impact.
Yeah, and when you mean leadership, just to put it out there, Nate's still involved in all of our meetings. He's still there. He's still giving feedback. He's helping out. He's not just become a leader and let go of everything and say, hey, Zenon, here, run with it, or hey, Ash, do this, or hey, Michaela, or hey, Joanna. Like, he just doesn't throw it. He's still involved. He's just, like he's saying, he's getting better at delegating it.
When I would say supportive, I'm trying to
Correct.
move more into like, hey, tap into me. I've got knowledge. How can I support you to reach this goal?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, when they move and say, I want to get away from, I want to hand off the reins of the company running to someone else. And I always kind of want someone to like that, slow that roll, because really think about what that means. Because a lot of people think that it means I hire someone, I dump all my stuff on their plate, and then I go do what I want.
Mm-hmm.
That's a recipe for failure. Because when you came in here, if I just dumped on everything on your plate and didn't help you and work with you, and like even now, like
I still ask you a bunch of questions.
yeah, and so it's the way that you're doing stuff. You become more of an educator as opposed to a task doer, but you're still involved, and you got to be involved, and there's still tasks you got to get done too.
Correct.
You know, so
there you go, guys. The uncommon advice.
all right, yeah.
So, guys, just make sure. What's it called? The bro code, gentleman code.
Yeah. So yeah, go ahead, share this podcast, please. Do us a favor, share it, like it, comment if you got questions about anything that we're talking about. Drop it in the comments.
Or if there's something you want to hear us talk about, or something
Yep.
you guys want to know, is there something you're dealing with, or if you have a business and you have something in marketing and you want us to review, we've been wanting to do a review on a small business, so it's free, guys. We'll do it. We'll look into it, and then we'll give some reviews on it. So,
Yep. And if you want to be the first to know about new dropping content and information, you can go to uncommonadvice.co, and you can subscribe to the newsletter and check out what we got going on.
awesome. Well,
So.
guess we're out. Wrap it up.
Hey, listen to this, might have to take the uncommon advice.